Welcome to Small Business, Big Network, the podcast for small business owners who want big results from their networking. I'm Liz Drury, a freelance voiceover artist who knows that if you're not working, then networking could help. Michael Fletcher runs a very unusual business. The Saucy printing company prints inedible inks onto plates for weddings, corporate events and so on. Michael has been networking for his business for a number of years, first of all in his native South Africa and now here in the UK. The idea for his business actually came about during a networking meeting. Thank you very much for being my podcast guest today, Michael.
Thank you very much, Liz. It's great to be here.
Now, you've got a very unusual business, which we'll talk about in a minute, but I'd like to just explore your background a bit first. What were you doing before you set up your current business?
So I've had about 22 years worth of printing experience where in South Africa, I had a printing business doing everything from textile printing to paper, signage, and basically branding. And that was in my blood. I had a very big fascination with silkscreen printing, and I wanted to explore that further. And I belong to my local B&I chapter in South Africa, which is a business networking event where we share networks and business contacts. And it was at one of those business meetings where I had a bit of a bright idea, and that's how my new business idea came about.
It's brilliant that your idea came about during a networking meeting. That's just the kind of story that we want for this podcast. So obviously, you've said you're from South Africa. What brought you to the UK and how long have you been here?
So I've only been here just on 2 years. In fact, next week it's my 2-year anniversary here. And it was just basically the life in South Africa. It's not the country it used to be. My wife and I had to think about my daughter, who's 8 years old. So we decided we've got to make a bold move, leave family behind. It was very tough. And as well as me having a well-established business, to just sort of give that up and start over again was a big decision to make. But we had to do it for the long-term prospects for my daughter mostly. And we're absolutely loving it here. And I wouldn't change a thing, to be honest.
Brilliant. So let's talk about your business then, the Saucy printing company. Tell me about the meeting you were at and how this idea came to you.
Sure. So in South Africa, the way our business meetings worked, every week we would have a 10-minute speaker who does a presentation, and during that 10 minutes, we would be served bacon and eggs. So we'd eat breakfast while we're listening to someone present their business. And because it's a business networking event, I would have a little box of business cards in front of me, which happened to be next to the plate of food. And I was busy eating my bacon and egg, and there was a couple of chips on the plate. When I got to the end of the meal, I picked up a chip, and I know this is the wrong thing to do, but I was dipping it in ketchup, and I was doodling, basically copying my logo off the business card that was next to me onto the plate. So I was effectively drawing in sauce. And when I completed my logo, that's when the little light bulb went off above my head, as you see in cartoons. And I thought, wow, there's edible branding on a plate. There's got to be something in this. Nobody's ever put brand in there in an edible fashion. So it was from that moment on, I knew that my love for print would enable me to turn this into a viable idea and then later into a viable business model. And the rest is history. The Saucy printing company was born.
And so is it still ketchup that you print in, or do you use something else now?
Yeah, so that was where it started, but it's not so much fun just licking ketchup off a plate. So I started playing around with chocolate sauce, and that's where I hit the gold mine, so to speak. So I predominantly print with chocolate sauce directly onto plates, which happens at weddings, corporate events, gala dinners, anywhere where there's a formal or informal meal that's served, and I print directly onto the plates. Chocolate is the most fun, but I also print in savory sauces as well. So if someone was to have, say, a corporate do and they want to serve some sushi, I can print in soy sauce, balsamic vinegar. I've printed with mayonnaise before, but chocolate is the most fun. We all want to lick chocolate.
Yeah. And so you mentioned doing this for corporate events and weddings and so on. What's the biggest event that you've done this for?
I had a client in South Africa who used me year after year, and we printed close to 2,000 plates. It was, I would call it more of a conference rather than a event. So at this particular conference, they'd have 2,000 guests, and I would work hand in hand with the hotel. So I would print behind the scenes, lay the plates out. You can imagine how much space is required for 2,000 plates. And then the chefs would come behind me, plates up, and that would be served to the 2,000 guests. So it was a massive event. And I was able to cater for it, which I'm glad I was able to do.
Yeah, I mean, presumably once you've printed something on a plate, that the plate then can't be stacked, so you've got to have a big space to spread them out in. Is that right?
That is right, although there is something in the industry called a jack stack. So it's like it's a stand with little mini shelves on it, if you like. So we can print and put them on there, so they can be stored vertically, and they take up a lot less space.
Yeah. And so how far in advance of the event can you print? I mean, obviously chocolate melts, so I'm guessing it's not too far in advance.
No, for that reason, I always print at the event, for transport reasons as well. I can't print and transport them. So I actually print at the event just before the meal's served. So if it's going to be a plated meal where the chef would plate up and serve it to the guests, I would work behind the scenes, side by side with the chef or the catering company. Print, they would plate it up and serve the guests. So we're talking about no more than 5 minutes before you are served, it's been printed. The alternative is where I print live in front of guests. So this would be a buffet scenario where you would come up to me, I would print a plate in front of you, we'd have a little bit of a chat, interaction, you could see the printing, you can smell the chocolates, I'd give you your plate, and then you would move on next to me where the buffet area is, and you would choose your little desserts and knickknacks. And that's the fun one, because there's that interaction, there's a bit of entertainment, and it's a visual aspect, which is really important for corporates, because it's bringing attention to the logo that I'm printing on the plate. And in this day and age, everybody takes pictures and they share it on social media and various platforms. And again, that's what the sponsor or the corporate of that event wants. They want their logo on the internet. So I'm just offering a brand new platform to be able to brand. And I always say, I now put branding where branding's never been put before, and that's onto a plate in lickable sauce.
Yeah, it's a brilliant idea. And I understand that you took your idea to South Africa's version of Dragon's Den. How did that go?
Yeah, that was great. So in South Africa, it's called the Shark Tank, as it is in the States and Australia and some other countries. It was a brilliant experience. If ever you think talking in front of a room is daunting, you must try with TV cameras and judges and dragons. But the exposure was absolutely phenomenal. You know, you just can't buy that kind of exposure. And the benefits were amazing. I got so much work off the back of it. I did not get an investment from the sharks or dragons on the day. They were concerned about a patent issue. Unfortunately, I can't patent this. I have tried because it involves food and recipes, and those kind of things can only be kept a secret. You can't actually patent a source. However, I've never had a competitor knocking on my door or a copycat, but I did reap all the rewards of being on a national TV show, and in fact international, because it got showed in other countries in Africa as well.
Yeah, fantastic. So you moved over to the UK 2 years ago. I guess that was around the time the pandemic was starting then, was it?
Yeah, probably the worst time to start looking for customers in the hospitality industry. But I made the most of it, and I did my networking while we were all sort of down with our hands tied. So by the time we were released into the open, I had my list of contacts to go and see. I had appointments set up. And fortunately, although I was starting a new business in the UK, I was starting with experience. So it's not completely new. I've been able to iron out all the issues over the years, and knowing that it's a proven, viable, profitable concept, that gave me the confidence to start from scratch again, because in a nutshell, a wedding is a wedding, an event is an event. It doesn't really matter that it's a different country. So I was confident that once we opened up again, things would take off. And they have. I'm very fortunate to have quite a full diary, especially with the weddings. there is quite a big backlog in weddings due to the pandemic, and I'm reaping the rewards of that, because this time of the year would normally be a wedding off season, and we seem to be having quite a bumper wedding season. So I can't complain.
Yeah. So talk to me about networking then. So you said that in South Africa you were part of BNI, and I know you've
Yes.
joined BNI over here. Have you noticed any differences between BNI in the two countries?
Yes, in BNI and business in general, especially with my product in particular, because this is new and innovative and disruptive. And I do find that here in the UK, people tend to shy away from trying different things. There seems to be a, if it's not broken, don't fix it kind of approach, which is difficult for me when I'm trying to bring something completely new to the party. So I have had to change my pitch for all these little small nuances and changes in business culture. But that's part of growing and being a business owner, is being able to adapt to the environment that you're in. And I do find there's a big culture of networking here in the UK, which I love, because the only way I'm going to get my business known is by speaking to people, tapping into their contacts, asking them to tap into their contacts on my behalf. So it's important that I continue networking and spreading the word, and letting people know that despite what your parents told you when you were young, you can lick your plates.
And do you attend other networking events apart from BNI?
Yes. So back to the pandemic, I had all the time in the world. So I joined my local Chamber of Commerce here in Cambridge. I found a South African Chamber of Commerce in the UK, which I joined as well, amongst some other virtual networking events. So I try to spread myself out as much as possible. I possibly even overdid it, because now I'm having events all over the country, and I'm traveling from Wales to Scotland to Cornwall. So I might have been better off just toning down slightly and focusing on a smaller area. But I'm not going to complain. I'm busy and I'm getting to see the country at the same time.
Yeah. So what is it about networking that keeps you going back to it?
I suppose in my case, it's a little bit different, because when I talk about chocolate printing, everybody smiles, and there's that fun element to it. So as soon as I start networking with somebody and they say, well, what do you do? And I explain that, they're all ears, and they've got a grin from ear to ear, which gives me the passion to continue talking. And yet I want to do what should be done in networking, is ask about the other person's business as well. How can I help you? And I try not to make it all about me, but everybody wants to know about this chocolate printing. So I've got to sometimes stop it and say, well, I want to know about your business now. Because network is important in terms of doing something for somebody else. There's a BNI network saying, "Givers gain," as you know, and so it's all about a two-way conversation.
Yeah. And do you ever do live demonstrations at the networking meetings that you go to?
Yes, funny enough, this morning was my turn to do the 10-minute presentation. Unfortunately, it's not South Africa, so they didn't serve bacon and eggs while I was talking. Probably fortunate, because I had their attention. But yes, I do demonstrations there, and I attend a lot of wedding fairs. That's a great place for me to market, and I always do a demonstration, because it is a visual product, and it's something that if I tell somebody that I put chocolate sauce onto plates and I'll put your logo, they always kind of picture me standing there just sort of squirting it out like you would have a happy birthday. And yet it's the opposite. It's extremely professional, it's consistent. The logos are printed by hand using a silkscreen format, so it's high-end branding. It's not just a little scribble done by hand. And people are welcome to go and visit my website to have a look at those kind of pictures, and you'll be surprised at how professional it does look and how it enhances the presentation of a meal.
Yeah, I had a look at your website actually, so I've seen the pictures, and they're just incredible. And so often with the wedding, there'll be like a little caricature of the bride and groom. Do you draw those yourself?
So unfortunately, I can't even draw a stick man if I try. So I have a couple of caricature artists at my disposal. So I would just get them to do the caricature for me, and then I will handle the rest of the artwork process. And the caricatures add another fun element to a wedding, because a bride and groom, when they plan their wedding, one of the first things they do is they say, my wedding's going to be different, and it's going to be unique, and it's going to be quirky, because they might deny it, but it's always a bit of a competition with their mate or their sister or somebody else's wedding. So bringing a bit of a fun element and a talking point into it is a big factor, because they want their guests to go home talking about their wedding or sharing the pictures from the wedding. And having a quirky little caricature of the bride and groom on the plate next to a piece of their wedding cake is a nice picture. It's a nice snapshot of the day, with the wedding date on it. So they love that. The guests love it. And I love being able to do it.
Yeah. Have you found that networking has helped you to find suppliers like your caricature artists and other people that you need to help run your business?
Yes, in fact, all of my artists came from referrals at BNI, as well as some of my source ingredients comes from a BNI connection. So you never know what you're going to get out there. You never know who knows who. I might be talking to a plumber, for example, but his brother might be the catering manager of the local university, for all I know. So networking is important to see beyond the person that you're speaking to, and try and tap into their little black book and sharing your black book at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. You really don't know who knows who.
Yes, exactly.
Now, I understand that actually, although you do lots of printing in chocolate, you can't actually taste the chocolate yourself. Is that right?
Yeah, it's very ironic. So a couple of years ago, out of the blue, I was diagnosed as a type 1 diabetic, which means I can't eat anything with sugar, which includes chocolate, and yet I'm printing chocolate for a living. So that has led me to, because I do make my own sauces, because they need to behave like an ink in that they don't block up on my screen, but yet they don't bleed when I print. So there's a bit of science in there. So I have been able to make sugar-free chocolate, gluten-friendly, gluten-free, vegan-friendly, because this comes up more and more these days at events where you need to cater for everybody. So in a way, that's kind of helped me to progress and add to my range of sources available. But yeah, unfortunately, I can't taste the desserts that are standing next to me at the buffet table.
That must be really tough.
Yes.
So do you have somebody to do the tasting on your behalf?
Yes, my wife gladly tests. In fact, she encourages me to try new flavors. And but yes, I have quite a range of sauces, like I mentioned, not just chocolates. I print in savory sauces too. And I also print, believe it or not, with a white milk chocolate. And the reason for that is if a corporate wants their logo to be printed in their corporate colors. So let's just use Coca-Cola as an example. They would insist that their logo would always be printed in their particular red. So I would take white milk chocolate and I will tint it with food coloring, get their exact red match, and I would print their logo as their corporate identity manual states, but yet it's still chocolate and fun.
Wow. Is that really difficult to get the shade exactly right?
For the average person, I would say yes, but I have 20 years plus of printing experience behind me, and that helps because I've always mixed ink through my life, matching corporate colors. So there is a bit of experience behind that. It's not just throwing a bit of green into white and expecting the right color to come out.
Fantastic. So finally then, if people want to know more and are interested in your services, where can they find you?
So on my website, which is www.saucyprint.com, and you can find a whole gallery of pictures there from various events I've been doing over the years, as well as a quoting platform. So if you're interested and you want to just find out what this costs, please log on to my website. And I can also be followed on Instagram at SaucyPrint, and you can keep up to date with all the weddings and functions I'm doing and have a look at the journey I'm on.
Lovely. Well, thank you very much. That's been a really brilliant story and something very, very different.
I knew it was going to be a bit saucy. Thank you very much for having me on, Liz.
Thanks for listening to Small Business, Big Network. If you found this podcast useful, please do rate, review and subscribe. And don't forget to share it with the rest of your network too.